I love being here. I love Denmark. I love Scandinavia. Jag pratar svenska, snackar norsk, spreche Deutsch, but I never understand the Danes. I have you guys surrounded by languages, and I still never understand what you say. You guys talk in some crypto language kind of a thing, all encrypted. So I was an exchange student in Sweden, up in the north, near Sundsvall. And I actually spent the second summer in Korsør, so I had some practice with Danish. And then I worked for the Central Bank of Norway, the Norske Bank. Not the Norske Bank, but anyway, the Central Bank, some while ago. And that was formative for my understanding of methodologies and so on. To give you an idea of how I got to the position, because I'm going to talk about where I am now and what I see now, right? But to give you an idea how I got to this position, in 1991, I was hired by IBM Consulting Group to create a methodology and process for their consultants to use on the new, at that time, Smalltalk and C++ projects. Java wasn't around yet. And I didn't know anything about the topic, so I got the books, all the books at the time, and I read them, and I said to my boss, they all disagree with each other, and I can't tell which one's right. So she said, well, we don't really care what the answer is. We don't have a product here that we have to worry about. Why don't you go and interview some teams and just find out what works, and we'll just do that. And so I started on what eventually became my PhD dissertation, which I got, by the way, from the University of Oslo, and my main coach advisor was from Aalborg. So really I have a lot of connections with Scandinavia. And what they told me didn't match anything in any of the books. That was the weird thing, because they had small co-located projects with, like I said, 3 to 6 people. They were shipping at that time every 2 months, which was considered very fast at the time. And they had direct access to their customers. And I asked them all the questions about case tools and project management and everything. Those that were following the process were not shipping software, like at 100%. Those that were shipping software, there was no way of talking about what they did. Like, there wasn't anything. There wasn't anything. And literally, the methodology that I wrote, called Crystal Clear, literally just says, get sort of, up to about 6 or 8 people in a room, leave them alone, keep the distractions away, give them access to the customer, and have them talk to each other and ship and talk to the customer, and you're done. That's it. And it makes no sense because there's nothing to say. You just do that and it works. So this is similar to Scrum but with fewer rules. So I have even fewer rules than Scrum because I don't have sprints and all that stuff that you do. It's just like, just leave them alone. They'll do it, right? So that occupied me, and then I was on a project in the mid-90s where we had 12 programmers, 12 Smalltalk programmers, which was like half the universe of Smalltalk programmers at the time. Big fixed price, fixed scope, fixed time, COBOL, database, Smalltalk project, 1.5 years. All the other projects around us failed at that time, and ours succeeded by some faint miracle. And the reason that it succeeded, besides a couple of super key people, was I used all the stories I had heard in all of the interviews, and something funny would happen. I'd say, well, I heard a story from these people, they did this, and we would do that, and then it would work. And like a good consultant, after I did it enough times, I stopped telling the stories and just gave the advice, right? So then they thought I was smart. But to this day, I live off of the stories that I hear. And so everything that I've written basically is stories I've heard of people who did things that succeeded, and it just works. It just works, okay? The punchline is, and it checks even today, that if you amplify the quality of the community, the quality of the conversations inside a team, inside a group of people, and give them access to feedback from the outside world, and they have to stop and think about it from time to time, because that was one of the other magics that I saw literally in 1992. A project, 24 C++ programmers. They had to deliver every 4 months. The first one was a catastrophe, disaster. And I knew enough at that point. I flew up to Canada to do this interview, and the guy's outlining the project for me, and I go, this is dead. This project's dead. There's no way it's going to succeed. And he said, and after 4 months, we had like no product, a demoralized team, and everything bad. And I'm going like, why did I fly to Canada? I don't have to go to Canada. We just got to cut out there for the people downstairs.
I can hear it, yeah.
Is it okay? There you go. The feedback's back now, so I know it's working here. Yeah. And then the guy said something I had never heard before, never read about. He said, we paused after 4 months. We got rid of 23 of the 24 programmers, hired new people, got just-in-time training, reorganized the teams, did this, did, and my jaw dropped on the floor. I had never heard of anybody totally gutting the process they were doing and starting over, but they had the same mission. 4 months later, they delivered something. They did it again. They changed the teams. They changed this. 4 months later, they were back on schedule, and 4 months later, they were ahead of schedule, and like heroes and stuff like that. I had never heard of that. So you have to stop periodically, and I think a month is a good number. If you have major deliveries, after every major delivery, you do it, but otherwise, you just do it once a month. And you just go, what's working, what's not working, what do we like, what do we change? And you have to be ready to change anything. So this is what I now call the heart of Agile. But that's where it came from, and it was all in place by 1995, right? So that's all done. So everything else I've done since then is to ask, why does that work? Why would we believe that any of that would work? I try to put words and theory and graphs and some, psychology and sociology on it and say, why would we believe any of that works? And then we go fast forward to today where I'm talking to you. So basically, I'm still living off of those interviews that I did in the early 90s. So everything I say, either it's math, it's psychology, or it's a story from a project that worked, right? So with that, let's go ahead. You'll see if we can get the slides back now. I live off of 4 words these days. Collaborate, deliver, reflect, improve. That's all you need. Everything else fits in there. Everything fits in there. So you collaborate to deliver, you reflect to improve. As you improve collaboration, things go better. As collaboration goes down, things go worse. That's so obvious, it feels funny saying it, but people don't put money on that. So I go around the world trying to get people to put money on increasing trust and collaboration. And guess what? That's what you guys are doing here today. That's exactly what you're doing here today, right? So, I heard Morton saying that. I wish I had a video. If you have a video of this, I'd love to get your, hey, turn to the person, look at the person that you don't know down. You're here because of them. Think about how and why they're doing their work, right? That's the collaborate part. The fact that that's central in this company is remarkable. That's wonderful. Now, you have to deliver. You deliver in stages to get value, but you deliver to get feedback. You have to get feedback. The world runs differently than you think it does. You're all living in a bubble. I don't care how bright you are, you're living in a bubble. The world runs differently than you think it does, and it's changing. So you have to keep touching the world. You don't have to have a full delivery, but you have to touch the world to find out how the world runs differently than you thought and how it's changing, right? This could be surveys, prototypes, shadowing. It could be lots of things. It doesn't have to be full delivery, right? And then you have to periodically stop and go, is something killing us? Is something going wrong? Or is there something we can do better? One of the two. So let's dig into that, first of all. And I call it the heart of Agile. In fact, it's got nothing to do with Agile. It's about teamwork. It's the work of teams. It's a very general topic. And I thought about calling it Teamwork 2.0 or something. And someone said, don't try to create like a new phrase. Then your life will be difficult. Agile's going everywhere. Just call it the heart of Agile. So that's what I did. So I have to go back and ask, what is Agile? And we used to, reference the manifesto, and because we meant this. But Agile, this stuff is outside of software now. It's in government, it's in nonprofits, it's in families, churches, publishing, it's in everywhere. We need language that will allow us to take those nice ideas and put them everywhere. So I go back to the dictionary definition. Agility is the ability to move and change direction quickly and with ease. And that's all I need. That's all I need. So I only use the dictionary definition from now on, right? Why do we care about that? Because the world is changing so fast. This thing in English they call VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. It used to be in the 90s, 80s, 70s, people thought that if you merely thought perfectly, you could figure out what the users wanted and how to make money, and you could figure out the plan, and if anything went wrong, it's because you didn't think hard enough. That was back then, right? It never worked for reasons, but it for sure doesn't work now. You can't even plan what the world's going to be 6 months from now. So everybody, every company, organization, every team, every industry, every family, every person has to develop this ability to move and change direction quickly and with ease, right? It's not binary. It's not agile, not agile. It's a gradient. You need to get better at this. You need to develop this ability. So we need words now that go out of software. We need words that will apply. You know, if you go to a village in southern Chile or Argentina and Patagonia, and you're doing something with the water supply, they can't have scrum masters and project managers, and you can't do that. So you have to have very simple words that work for anybody. Turns out that if you replace the word work product with the word decision, everything works out. So I'll talk about initiatives, projects, managing decisions, flows of decisions. Everything you deliver into the world is the result of a pile of decisions made by the organization, and we'll take a look at that. That may be the biggest sharp aha for people who haven't thought about that before. Okay? Now, my colleague Jeff Sutherland wrote this book called The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time, and I respectfully suggest everybody burn that book. At least burn the cover. I've never opened it. I'm not going to open that book. Because imagine you're an employee and your boss reads that book and now says, you are going to do twice the work in half the... Everybody's already working at 110. How are you going to do that? That's not the point. That's, in fact, a false promise, and the bosses will get disappointed and disillusioned if they think they're going to get that. They're not going to get that. The magic is that we've learned how to deliver more value for the same amount of work. Nobody talks faster, nobody thinks faster, nobody works faster, but we've learned techniques to deliver more value from the same amount. And that's magical. Why do you need more than that? That's fantastic. So that yesterday in our workshop, we looked at that very carefully. We spent most of the afternoon on that, and I'm doing a master class for the next 2 days. Some of you will be in that. We'll look at that again very, very carefully. And I'll show you some of it here. So the point is, what we're after with the word agile and stuff is how to deliver more value from the same amount of work. The problem we've got right now is all of the agile frameworks, the technical, they're tied to software, they're too complex. Scrum's got a vocabulary, and people just go, oh my God, I have to learn all of this vocabulary. So we need a simpler entry point for everybody that doesn't contain weird words. Reflection and reflect is the weirdest word I've got for you. And it turns out it's more powerful, it's simpler, more general, and so on. And so I call this the heart of Agile. There's a phrase there, brilliance in the basics. I got this from the U.S. Air Force. They have so many airplanes that they can't train the pilots how to operate every cockpit to perfection. So they decided this phrase that they have to have the basics so good they can get into any cockpit and execute the basic things that they would have to do, like that. This maps to martial arts, it maps to many, many, many things. But in particular, these four, they look like nothing, but they open up into everything. So these are the basics. You just get better at collaboration. You just get better at delivery with feedback. You just get better at reflecting and improving. That's it. That's the whole story. And you do it forever, right? And what I like to say is I don't have to teach anybody how to collaborate. You already know how to collaborate. You just don't want to. And the problem is I've been giving this lecture since 2015. And I'm in the shower and I hear this little voice, right? I'm having trouble with somebody. I have to tell you the story. So 2018, I moved to Florida, and I very carefully hunted. We needed a website for Heart of Agile. I found a website shop 3 blocks from my house, and they said they would do, oh, you're Alistair Cockburn, we'll work in whatever way you say. I had a little team, right? And I met everybody, and I said, I'm going to co-work with the graphic designer. And she told her boss, I'm not having my clients co-work with me, right? And he said, do what he says. And we solved so many problems by just walking over 20 minutes, never longer than 20 minutes, close out decisions, right, et cetera. The only person I didn't meet was the account rep, right? So they got account reps for all the customers, right? You know what the job of an account rep is? It's to keep the client from talking with the programmers. And I know that, and she knew that. And so I sent her some email when she came back. Oh, happy to meet you, blah, blah, blah. I look forward to working with the programmers and the designers. And she's busy, keep your fingers out. And, all of this stuff. We go back and forth. And I'm suffering because I've met everybody in the team. We're getting along great. She's busy being a block. So I call up my business partner, Sola Pinter, who's now in Brussels. And you guys should give her a call sometime. And I say, blah, 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 I'm suffering. She goes, did you walk over and talk to her? And I hear this little voice, you know how to collaborate, you just don't want to. I didn't go over there. But I sent her emails, right? She has to walk over and talk to her. So I had to do that. So that's what I mean, right? It's literally that simple. If you have a problem, literally one of you has to just get up and walk over and talk to them. Deliver, I'll break that apart. That's more technical, and then reflect and improve. And I'm going to have a section on leadership, because leadership seems to be the hot topic these years, and I have something to say that I've observed. So this is SOLA, and we're so addicted to processes and frameworks. Everybody thinks this is it's not a process, it must be a framework. Scrum's a framework. What's a framework? Nobody knows, but it's better than a process, so Scrum's not a process, it's a framework, right? And so we have a habit. So SOLA found a way to break out of that metaphor into a different metaphor. She said it's like a compass. Like a compass, if you're in the woods or you're somewhere, you don't go north and south and the east and south and what. You don't do that, right? You say, I want to get there. What direction is the next direction for me to move in at this time? In this way, the heart of Agile is like a compass. You want to get somewhere and you say, okay, here we are today. Where do we put our emphasis now? Do we need more energy on the collaboration, or do we have to get some of the delivery stuff? Do we stop and pause and do a reflect? Which of these is our actions that we take now? So it's like a compass, and that gets us out of this process framework language completely, right? When you go and you do this, and what I love her phrasing, to decide in which direction to advance the conversations. So there's all about the conversations you're having. When you're having these conversations up there, the first one in Collaborate is trust. Right? Obviously, we're out of process territory at this point. How are you going to increase trust between the people? You're going to have to deal with the culture of surfacing bad news early, the culture of getting up and walking over and talking to someone, all of that stuff. Rewards. Whenever I have a CXO group, first topic I bring up is, how are you guys compensated? Often the CXOs, two vice presidents, let's say they have conflicting goals, right? Their bonuses rely on things that conflict. One of them is, let's say, quantity, and the other is quality. So they can't help each other because their bonuses are at stake, right? So that limits the collaboration you can get. And my favorite story out of there, I was at Vodafone in Greece and had the CEO of Vodafone and his direct reports. Of course, they report to Vodafone Europe, which reports to Vodafone, right, global. So that CEO is already 2 levels down. And I brought this up, and he said, no, we're all compensated on a team, output, but I can see how when we break it down below us, we end up getting non-communicating silos. So I think we can make some adjustments on how those compensate. Right? And I went, that's perfect. That's the kind of thinking we want to have. So those are the conversations there. Deliver, I'll talk a bit about internal flow, deliver for value, and deliver for learning. Right? Those are 3 topics that come out of there. The thing about reflecting, it's not hard. People aren't used to stopping and talking to each other about how are we doing and where are we happy and where are we unhappy. So the main thing is just to pause, stop work on the product, breathe, check your emotions, check the data, decide what you really want, what's forward, and then in the improvements, we ask for just micro changes. Many, many, many small changes, no big changes, many small changes. That's what we're doing these days, borrowing it from psychotherapy research. So those are the conversations. We've attempted to mind map this, and it turns out you can't mind map it because literally everything in the world fits into here except for use cases, which really makes me sad. I don't know where to put use cases in here. So I shove them under Collaborate. So I'll peel apart some of this. I have other lectures. There was a nice one I gave in Denmark, I think in 2018. at the Radio Place downtown, and it's on the Heart of Agile website. Magnificently videoed, you like everything. It's the best, full talk I had at the time, and you can still find that if you want to, maybe more details. I want to focus on the attitude because there's structural changes you need to make. For instance, if you change the employee evaluation criteria to add collaboration as one of the top 2 things, that's a structural change, right? That's a DNA legal change, right? If you change the compensation rules for the executives, that's a structural change. The one structural change I've always asked for, pardon people who work remotely, is cross-functional teams literally sitting together, like move the chairs. That's what we did in the 90s. You move the chairs. That's a structural change that helps collaboration. Basically, all the rest is attitude, like the fact that anybody wants to or doesn't want to. So this is the dominant thing to work on. So there's a bunch of stuff about attitude. I'll talk about leadership. Listen, allow failures. We looked at yesterday a deck of cards. I don't have any more with me, called collaboration cards, which show exact individual movements for improving collaboration in a team, something I decoded about 20 years ago. And some of the people who were in the workshop yesterday have those cards. I want to talk about the leadership aspect. So this is a nice Danish guy, lives in Salt Lake City, been CIO, COO for decades, and he made, of course, all consultants have a 2x2 matrix, and I can never read 2x2 matrices except you're supposed to be in the upper right corner. You always have to go from the bottom left to the upper. That's all I ever know. So what I did is I built it so I would understand is 2x2. I made it like a bridge. You start down here, command and control, low trust, low ownership. If you want to have energy and innovation, you have to get trust and ownership everywhere, is the way he put it. Trust and ownership everywhere. And if you fall off the bridge, you get into apathy or conflict or who knows what. But the point is, you're trying to increase trust and ownership everywhere. That's his, and he could talk for an hour on that. What's interesting is I'm going to map this to some management theory from the 1970s, Theory X and Theory Y. And Theory X, I'll just put them up here. The guy in the 1970s said, I see a change in management. So he was detecting what was there. He said the old school management that people had been used to, as he called it Theory X, you assume that the workers are stupid and lazy. And it was literally in the writing at the time. They really said you have to assume the workers are stupid and lazy. And you have to push them. And you have to, yell at them and stuff. Now, I guess if you're shoveling coal and somebody comes up behind you and goes, faster, faster, right? You get adrenaline and you go faster, right? But if you're doing mental work, right, whether it's accounting or UI design or software design or whatever, and your boss comes up behind you and goes, faster, faster.
Yeah, Boston.
There, we have it. See? All right. Oh, no, I made him dangerous. He's going to do this just to prank you, right? You know he's going to do this. Let's just see what the reaction is. Faster. Come on, Simon. Please don't do that to me. No, it doesn't work. Oh, I like this. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Now it works. Yeah. No, it doesn't work, right? You get that a couple of times a day and you can't work. You're frozen, right? Because the amygdala kicks up and fear center. In order to do good creative work of any variety, you really need the prefrontal cortex relaxed, right? You have to have no threats anywhere. You're looking for the contact of neurons, right? A loose contact of neurons to get a link between this or this and get a new idea. You have to be really quiet inside. So this is theory Y. So he said, I think I'm seeing management, this is in the 70s, where people have run the opposite assumption, assume the workers are motivated and smart, they can do their stuff, they might need training, mostly they need direction, and they'll tell you what's happening, at the leaves of the organization. And that's theory Y. So I call this the push and the pull, and then a project manager says, oh, I can do that, I can pull instead of push. I go, no, that's not what I'm saying, right? The workers have to pull, right? You don't get to push. So I change it. The opposite of push is not pull. It's like choose or permit or something like that, right? They get to choose what they're doing. Now here comes the conundrum. And this is like a logical consequence that we get out of that is you saw there was a... Should I just wait?
It's a cinema, I think.
Yeah. I just have to pause from time to time. There we go. We're back. I can tell from the little echo. Is if you have a company... And it's a private company most private company owners are greedy, so they're like that. But some private company owners are nice. But if you have a public company, the stock market is greedy, and they're doing Theory X on the CEO and the president, and they squeeze. They don't care if you have ulcers. They don't care. They only want the profit, right? So those guys are applying Theory X push down on the top. Down on the bottom, we want Theory Y, choose, permit, right, relax, think. That means logically some manager has to be your what I call push-to-pull umbrella. And you hear it all the time. People say a good manager acts as a heat shield. We use those words, right? A push-to-pull umbrella. Which is really interesting because Neil Nicolaisen, I was interviewing him about one of his many companies and projects, and he said, that's exactly what I did. He said the management was so nasty, the programmers basically just hid. I took all of the heat, to use that word, created a safe space for them, and they blossomed, they talked, they became good programmers, we delivered things. He said, I left, and the top management came down again, and they all went and hid again, right? So somebody has to do that. So if you have a really good quiet life, look upwards. Somebody is providing your heat shield, and it starts with Simon, and I suspect that he does a pretty good job at it. But basically, all the way from the top, somebody has to give you that space for the thinking. So if you have a good manager, if you have a good life, look upward and pass the thanks, up the line. I interviewed a Danish guy just 2 days ago, Jan Sirich, who has a series of unreasonably successful projects. I interviewed one of his workers in 2000, right? So like 22 years ago. And Ole Jepsen, if any of you know him, is a friend of mine. And Ole introduced me to Jens, and I interviewed Jens like 22 years ago. And they referenced to this guy that I didn't, but I met him like 2 days ago, and he just finished an even more aggressive project. And so I'm like, tell me your secrets, right? And anybody that good can't tell you what they do. But one of the things is this. He says, I go to the CEO and I say, if I knock on your door, you give me resources and don't say no. And otherwise you leave me alone. And then he hires people. He gets a couple of good people. And he tells them, I'm not going to say anything, just do your work. If you need anything, come to me. Right? So you can see he's doing this at that level. And he's got unreasonably successful projects. Very interesting guy. I'm so happy after 22 years I finally got to interview him. We're looking from autocratic leadership to what I'm going to talk about at some point here in a moment is guest leadership, which gets us into the leadership thing. Leadership's a hot topic these days. Leadership has kind of changed, and people talk about lateral leadership, situational leadership, host leadership, guest leadership. Every kind. We could write a new manifesto because everybody's thinking similar thoughts. That implies there's a culture change. We're in the middle of some kind of a culture change. I want to talk about Esther Derby came up with a nice little triangle I'm going to show. Mark McCargow has the best book on how to be a manager I've ever seen. He says, pretend you're the host at a party. Your job, well, I'll just talk about it. It's right there. Your job is to invite people and set up the room and like introduce people to each other and check on all this stuff. But these 4 positions that he's got here in the gallery with the guests in the spotlight in the kitchen are for me the magic. So in the gallery, the host, you're looking at the group and you're watching, you're assessing the mood, right? Are people talking to each other? Is the ambience good? How's the music? How's the food? Right? And then you might go into the kitchen and cut more bread or open more wine or whatever that might be. Then you maybe go mingle with the guests and say, hey, can I introduce you to this person? Do all this stuff. And then every now and then you stop and you make an announcement. Hey, everybody, it's time for the thing. So those 4 movements and then those 6 roles are just magical. And so anybody who says, hey, I just got promoted to being a manager, I say, get this book. I read it. It'll give you the decomposition. Now, I'm a bit of an anarchist, and I don't like to have a boss. I don't like to be a boss. So the idea of only one person being the leader in a group bothers me. And I talked to somebody, Liza, last night. Does anybody remember her last name from last night? No. And her partner, they have a book, and they say everybody's a follower and everybody's a leader. So they have a language like that. So again, similar kind of a theme. Everybody's a leader and everybody's a follower, and you have to learn how to play both those roles and go back and forth. So the way I phrase that is What happens if the guests at the party take some leadership moments temporarily? And I call that guest leadership. So it might be it happens. You know, you're at the party with your friend and you see you're out of bread or cheese. You go in the back, you cut bread, you cut cheese, right? And you bring it back out. That wasn't your job, but you do it. It happens a lot, especially, you know, in the U.S. I assume it happens in Denmark. You're at a party and you run out of beer, and so someone says, hey, I'm going to go to the store. Who wants what? Okay, beer, you want wine, I want, you know, whatever, kombucha, whatever the thing is people are wanting these days. And you go do it. And a couple of people make a beer run, right? That was a moment of leadership where somebody took action. They energized a few other people, right? I go to the Paris subway. This lady gets out with twins in a stroller and a couple of suitcases and is staring at this big bunch of steps, right? So some people come out of the subway and say, hey, let's help. Two people grab the strollers. They go up the right? That's guest leadership. And it's everywhere. It's on the airplane. It's everywhere. It's in the neighborhoods. The first person who set up a continuous integration machine, it wasn't part of their job. It was a moment of guest leadership. So guest leadership is like what glues our society together. And so I'm fascinated by that. And this picture here was in Brazil. And there was a family that was, you know, struggling out in the ocean. Somebody had a brilliant idea, crazy idea, to make a human chain. 80 people who didn't know each other formed a human chain. So that was not the lifeguard, because the lifeguard would have gone out in a boat. So somebody took action, organized 80 people, and at the end they all went back and, you know, lay on the beach or whatever. So this is cool. And I've found a couple of companies where this is kind of the standard. When they bring someone in, they do things such that they understand. They just take initiative. Yeah, you've got roles, but just take initiative if you see anything that needs doing. Guest leadership. Now, I danced tango. I have to tell you, last year I was taught, because we're so close to Malmö, I was giving a lecture at the Skatteverket in Malmö. And there was a lady there, and she says, I understand Alistair dances tango. Can we dance tango when he's here? And the whole thing escalated until the only place to do it was outside the cafeteria in the public space, and we had a screen and we were projecting it. I didn't know the lady. I didn't have any shoes. I walked in. She gave me somebody's tango shoes, right? I did like that. Then I checked the AV for the lecture, then came out and danced tango with her before the lecture. And the host goes, is it okay if we video this? You better video this. Are you kidding? I'm dancing tango at the Skatteverket in Malmö, right? So I danced tango. And in 2018, one of the founders of modern tango, you know, from back in 1990 time frame, said, Chicho is his name, Chicho Framboli, said, I used to do it wrong. I used to, when I led, I made sure that my partner put her foot where I wanted her to go. Like if I wanted her to do a thing and her put her foot there, I just made sure that she put her foot there. So that was wrong. It's not the way to do it. And that was in 2018, so 5 years ago. He says, now I initiate. In fact, I don't even like lead or follow. He initiates. But then he listens really hard to figure, wherever she's going, he's going to make it like that was the right thing to do, right? So he initiates. She makes a move, and if it's not what he had in mind, it's his job now to make it look good so that she feels good, right? That was amazing, and I don't know how that fully applies in companies, corporate leadership thingies, but it's a little bit like that. When the companies did the guest leadership I was talking about, I asked two of them. One of them, I said, how did you change the company culture so fast? Like that really can't happen. He said, I just said yes to every request. Didn't matter what they asked for. I just said yes. You know, some were good, some were bad. I just wanted to get them all moving. So he did that, right? They said, hey, can we get a couch? Hey, can we put our desks together? Hey, can we try Amazon AWS? Can we, right? He just said yes. And then the company took over the real estate market in Australia. That was real estate online in Australia. So you can do that. But the one that got me was just last year. I was in Argentina, and my teacher, I've had this teacher for 10 years. She says, hey, let's go to this, dance thing. So we go to dance. And how am I going to dance my teacher, right? How am I going to lead my teacher? I'm the dummy of the group, right? So anyway, I'm doing this thing, and suddenly my foot moves out from under me. She moved my foot. And we're like, what the, right? And then she did it a couple of times. And then the next lesson, she did it again. I go, what are you doing? She says, well, you weren't using that foot. So like I did this, right? This foot didn't have any weight on it. She just had an idea. She moved my foot to where she wanted it to be. Well, dang! I said, but now that applies in leadership. That is the new model of leadership right there. And that's what we want to talk about. So this, I'll actually read these, but I may need my glasses. This was actually last year, and it was a lovely young lady here in the XP conference last year, and she says, "I'm quitting my job. One last week of toxic boss, and then it's over. Bad bosses are a pox upon our society, and I will dedicate my professional life to their eradication. I'll radicalize the next generation so nobody is willing to work under a bad boss anymore. We're pretty radicalized about that already. Work reform." Yeah, she's 26 years old. Right? But this is what I'm saying. There's a culture shift I want to get to here. I had a conversation with a potential employer where I respectfully asked for mutual respect. He flipped out at the mere mention of it and rescinded the job offer. Then the next person said, "He took control over my UX screens meetings. I will go out because he doesn't let me work." Go out means quit. Okay? My point is that the being a good boss rules haven't changed since the 70s at least, right? Probably forever. But the employees no longer accept bad leadership. They don't accept it. That's the thing. The bosses have to catch up now that the people are not putting up with that stuff anymore. So the message is like, there are people who are doing this already. That's cool. Keep doing it. You're on the right track. There are those who aren't sure it looks weird, looks like weak or funny. No, flip over and do that. There are those who can't do this. Your time is limited, right? Because the workers are, it's standard. I watch as people age, like I watch certain culture shifts happening. The millennials made a culture shift I noticed in 2014 that I hung on to. And this thing here is now up to about, in the 30s, low 30s or something like that. So I watch these, and these people, I follow them because they're going to be the next leaders and executives and stuff. But the workers now are saying this. People now expect their bosses to listen to them. So that's what I have to say about leadership is this idea of, I like guest leadership. How can you get it so people are comfortable if they see anything that they just step out of their official job role, right? Just take initiative, get a few other people, take care of whatever it is, and then go back on their regular track, right? And then make sure that that the bosses, that your people expect you to listen, right? That's the move the foot out from under you kind of a thing. All right, checking on the time here. We're in good shape. I want to talk about decisions. So this is like the technical part here. The thing I'll show some graphs and stuff. It doesn't matter. An organization is like a large brain in which the people are neurons. And so the organization is doing a kind of a calculation of some sort. You need all neurons to exchange information. The problem or weird thing about people as neurons is that they wander off. They have legs, right? And they wander off. And they take, vacation, paternity leave, whatever, and they come back. And the whole computation's been going, and they have to catch them up, right? So we have this weird thing where they're all trying to share information, but they're wandering off and coming back and wandering. That's the situation we're dealing with. Whatever you deliver in the world, whether it's a press release, a strategy announcement, a product, anything, is nothing but a bundling up of a bunch of decisions that the people made. Right? So this is the unit of work, sort of the atomic building block of an organization. So there's a lot that could be said. What's interesting is that when you look at it this way, an organization doing mental work has the same mathematical properties as a manufacturing line. And that's weird because in manufacturing you do the same thing every time. In design you do something different every time. But if we look at the math, somebody on the left there says, our next strategic project or product is. That's a decision. Probably it's already got 5 decisions in it. And then the next group of people builds on it. So they add decisions. And so we actually have a conveyor belt of decisions where people take previous decisions and they add on them. And you go from 5 till by the time you get done with the software, you have 10 million lines of code or whatever you have like that. And every line of code is a decision. Most organizations work in a kind of a lumpy manner, like the old car manufacturing used to do in Detroit. They didn't care if they had car parts stacked to the ceiling because they knew in the 60s somebody was going to buy that car. Right? Now, if a movie came out and a hero was driving a different car, they were stuck. They couldn't change the factory. Over in Japan, they were doing single-piece flow. They didn't have money for inventory, so they had to do this, right? But the good news is they could fix defects faster. If something was wrong, they didn't have a lot of parts in inventory they had to rework. And if a movie came out and the hero was driving a different vehicle, they could literally change the factory and produce the new vehicle. In fact, nowadays, they insist on having multiple vehicles in the same plant all the time, forcing them to be this like always changing stuff so they can move like that. But the point is, this is a lumpy flow. So you have 1,000 decisions, then you have 10,000, then you have 100,000, a million decisions. You give it to the testers. They find hundreds of bugs. They throw back a big pile of 100 bug reports, and the people are doing new work and rework and bug reports, and everybody's suffering. And if the world changes, you're stuck because everything is halfway done. Right? So it's bad for morale, and it's bad for changeability, and it's bad for feedback, and it's bad for economics. It's actually just bad all around. And what we're looking for is the mental equivalent of the Toyota production line. Right? And so there's a thing called minimum marketable feature, which is written about in 2005 in a book called Software by Numbers. And it's the smallest thing the market can accept. Smaller than that doesn't have any meaning to the market. Right? So that's as small as you can get on the entry point. Then you do the usual thing, splitting user stories, sprint backlog, all that stuff, right? But what you're gaming for is the smallest piece of work with the fewest number of decisions, get it integrated, find out what's wrong with it, get it fixed, get the little feedback loops, get that rework done. Because if you don't fix it, that error then adds up, and later you've got 2 million lines of code, and you still have the error, but now you have to search 2 million lines of code to find out where the error is. And you have echoes and ghosts of the same error, right? Now, you fix it in early, you put it out, you get the feedback from the real world, right? And you go on to the next, right? So we're trying to get organizations to shift from big requests at the beginning to the smallest you can manage, minimum marketable feature, and inside smaller and smaller packets that go through these little feedback loops, check the UI, right? Check the integration, check the security, check the scaling, right? Check all the stuff, right? You do that, and you get the smallest thing possible out, get the feedback, right? Prototypes, all the usual things. This one is the one that I live off of all the time, and we're taking a look at growth of knowledge over time. Normally, if you work in the old way, and this is in marketing, this is in every field, people work separately, and they integrate everything at the end. And if they don't, they still deliver to the users or the market in one big lump with 2 million decisions, right? All those 2 million decisions are all delivered, right? And when they deliver it, that's when you get to find out all the mistakes you made earlier. Like that's really a bad idea. It's not comfortable. Any big bang delivery has got this property that the errors are buried. You find them after you integrate or after you deliver, and it's bad news. So what we want to do is have a small failure, a small learning, a small something early. And the art of product or project management these days is to carefully stage the questions you ask to expose the things, to expose the errors early. And you ideally want the fewest possible bits of bad news there's always one that shows up at the last second, right? But you want knowledge to grow like that. And the things you're learning about the business model, what do the users want, what do they pay for, all that business stuff. You're learning all the technical stuff, security, scaling, API, all of that stuff. My favorite, you're learning how do people work, how do they work best, what sets them off, what makes them angry. Does that facial expression mean you're listening or are you annoyed, right? Blah, 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 blah. That takes time. You have to take time out from the regular work to work on that. That's what today is for, right? And my favorite, the other one is cost and schedule. Are we going to hit the deadline? You guys have got real deadlines, right? Are we going to meet the deadline? What does it cost? You need to know that. So there's things you do, if I back up to there, you'll do little experiments around all of those topics, and it's a risk reduction, right? You're learning about those things. And the benefit is that you have this long tail where the business can decide, I know it's not perfect, but deliver it now. Or they can say, I know it's not perfect, hold on to it and make it better. But business is in charge, not the programmers who are having to work overtime. Right? It's this incremental, not just incremental programming, incremental growth, but also the growth of knowledge in little bits. Right? That's where we are. and in the 90s, I didn't know how to talk about this. Figured this out about 2009. This applies to one-person projects. And 10,000 person projects, this applies to every project everywhere, right? So this is magical. Where am I? I'm about very close to the end. So here's a couple of quotes. Now this is weird. Where's my? That's what I want. Gimme. So this is kind of cute. I captured this off of Twitter, and this is business learning. And there's a thing called concierge where you don't write the code. You put a person behind the scenes to simulate the code because hiring a person is cheaper than hiring a bunch of programmers, and the person can react to surprises. And I just screen snapshotted this, and I found the author and told him later I was quoting him. Brian, your next automated pizza delivery. Oh, you already read ahead. I'm going to read it all out loud anyway. Brian, your next automated pizza delivery is scheduled for blah, blah, blah. To confirm, text yes. To decline, no. And this guy, he must be a tester. I'm sure he's a tester. Thank you, Papa John, you handsome man. I shall call you the Carbs Vixen. We're sorry, we didn't understand. Please confirm or decline. When I make love, I imagine you tossing some dough shirtless. Dude, our automated system isn't set up yet. This is a real person texting you. I make minimum wage. Please just tell me if you want the pizza. So that's called concierge. It's a technique, standard technique. You could guess this guy's a tester. Has to be. So learning about the business. And then the guy I have the deepest respect for, Craig Brown, left his company. They were crazy good Agile. They bought all their competitors. I guess he made money. Started his own company. He's now CEO. He's in Australia, works with India. And what he says, you must allocate time for social bonding here. Techniques inside the meeting, like giving people time to spend time and laugh and enjoy each other's company, right? This costs time, and if you go into an organization that's trying to do twice the work in half the time, they see that as waste. But really, it's a social learning. It's that first collaborate, trust, collaboration, right? Learn about the people, all that stuff. So I love that quote from him. He has a sterling career of helping. I have to tell about him. First time I met him in like 2009 or something, and he said, first time I heard about Agile and Scrum was, pick a number, 2004, 2006. I didn't know anything about it. I was the project manager, and these people were doing these things with their, what they call the sprint retrospective, and it was clear to me they were just wasting time, like they weren't doing anything. So one day I said to them, hey guys, instead of doing that, how about we just go down to the pub? I'll buy. So I went down to the pub, Friday afternoon or whatever. I bought them all beer. And, they talked obviously somewhat about work and a lot not about work. And guess what? Things got better, right? And so he instituted that. And he worked at a company called Aconex. And I was visiting him because that was the one that just like bought all the competition. And he would bring people from India or the US and he would just take them on pub crawls around Melbourne, Australia. That's what he would do. And then one day he comes to me because I said every project needs, listen to this, every project needs a budget line item for building trust. And if you're co-located, your budget is like movies and pizza and beer. And if you're distributed, it's airplane tickets, hotels, trips to Disneyland, whatever, right? I want it to be manifestly obvious that it's more expensive to build trust when you don't see the people every day, right? He comes in to me one day because I used to stay at his house. He says, guess what? I said, but nobody will ever get that, right? Because all the bosses, all the CFOs will say, shrink that budget, right? That's the kind of thing people typically say. He goes, I actually have a budget line item for building trust in the company, Aconex. And I can tell you what it is. It's $150,000. So he had a $150,000 budget just to fly people back and forth and go on pub crawls. Or then he had to deal with all the non-drinkers, so he had to figure out what you do if you don't go to pub crawls. It doesn't matter, but he figured it all out, stuff like that. So I love that quote from him. Now I don't reflect and improve tend to go together. The big thing is we do micro improvements now. So you take any topic, you say on a scale of 1 to 10, where are we? It's not so good. Maybe it's a 4. You don't go from a 4 to a 10 or a 4 to an 8 or a 4 to a 6. You go from a 4 to a 4.5. And you just say, if we're 4, some things are kind of working. Let's just amp up everything that is kind of working and see if it works better. So you're not making a change. You're just emphasizing something that's already working. And then when you have new ideas, you only try to have a new idea that gets you from a 4 to a 4.5 or 4 to a 5. You never go past that. And then you get a success, maybe, right? And then now you're at a 4.5 or 5, and you go to a 5.5, right? And about the time people typically get to 7 or 8, they stop working on that. There's a different topic they want to work on instead. So that's what that is. And here's the technique. What's nice about this is you can apply this in literally anything in your home life, everywhere. It actually comes from solution-focused psychotherapy, which then morphed into solution-focused coaching and enterprise stuff. And we use it and teach it. It's used in Paris by all my colleagues. I caught myself, I was caught teaching them this thing, and they all practice it and teach it. I go, why am I talking to you about this stuff? It looks like this. You say, what would you really like? That's directional. What would you really like? What would be a 10 on a scale of 10? Okay, and you say that. And that gives you a direction. On a scale of 1 to 10, actually it should be 0 to 10. But scale of 1 to 10, where are you? Maybe it's a 3, maybe it's a 4, right? Okay, good. Now the first thing we're going to do is forget about the 10. Just look at why aren't you at a 0? Something's working somewhere, a little bit, sort of, right? Find those occasions where anything worked and just copy them, do them again. And then ask, how do I get to 4.5? What actions can I take that'll just move me up a little bit? So that's the short form, and we'll do in the workshop the next 2 days. We'll actually spend like about an hour taking a topic and working through all of this, so you'll have some amount of practice with it. And my friend Jerry Derbier just lives from this. This is his consulting stick. He goes in with the heart of Agile and solution focused and the book host, and that's all he uses. He goes into a company and he just works on trust and collaboration using these tools and micro improvements all the time. Yeah. So that's that. And then here, check your emotions, check your data. There's too much data. People don't actually look at the data. I'm not a data guy. Other people are data. I'm an emotions guy, so check your emotions. They tell you what's going on, but check your data. There's a ton of it. And Jerry Derbier, the French guy, I said something about you always have to look in the past when you reflect. I don't like that. I'm a future-focused person. He said, no. And apparently the word reflect in French, réfléchir, is actually the thinking, the sense of it is in the future. In English, the sense of it is reflect is in the past. And in French, the sense of it is in the future. So he says, first decide what you want. What would a beautiful world look like to you? Now that you know that, now look at your emotions and your data and decide what to improve. And I went, poof, my head exploded. This is a picture I took, again, off of Twitter. It's how you get started with the stuff. I call it the heart of Agile, but you'll notice my name's not on there anywhere. It's just 4 words. You literally put an X up, and you just ask people to put up sticky notes, say anything about collaboration. Now, people will say what's bothering them, what they wish for, where they're hung up, where their dependencies are. So just put stuff up. What about delivery feedback? People will use the whip limit. They'll put hard whip limit. They'll do the Kanban thing inside that quadrant over there. For reflecting, what do we want? What are the emotions? What are we data? And then for improve, what are the micro? Just have a conversation. So Jerry Derbier walks into a company. It's like the first thing. He didn't have to say anything. He just puts up the X, and with the 4 words, and he says, well, let's just put up some notes about that and see where the conversations are, right? And then people will tell you everything. It'll be right up there, and then you just work with it. And the reason this is out of focus is because I don't know this guy, David Koss. Literally just put it on Twitter. So since I don't know him, I can't show his team's work, so I fuzzed it. But that's how hard it is. Like, literally just do that. And then for remote work, which fortunately doesn't apply to you guys, but I have to talk about it just a little bit. I hate remote work. Well, I was a remote worker and I loved it. And then I became a project sponsor and I hated it. And so I study like why could that be the case? And here's I don't have scientific data on this, but here's my sense. When I was a worker, I thought I knew what the assignment was, and I was happy to have quiet time to work on it. When I'm a sponsor, it's clear to me they don't know what the assignment is. And they think they do, and they go off in the wrong direction. And I have, so far, in 30 years or 25 years, 0 successful distributed remote projects. 0. I hate them. I never get what I want. I know what I want. And the way I fix problems, I fly there. I spend 20 minutes in a cafe with somewhere. We close up all the confusions, make new ideas, close out decisions. I go away, and things freeze again. So I hate it. But it's here, right? So the good news about remote work, it allows people to work in a decoupled fashion. You will get lowered communication. You will get, and I read everything I can find about how to increase trust. And those people who are used to co-located work, oh my God, they suffer. They know what they could have, but the people who've never done the co-located are finding ways to do, to do things for trusted communication. It's here to stay, and we need new work habits. And so I read everything I can find about how to do that. Everything backfires. Some things work. You try it twice, it backfires. I don't know where we are. So that's what I've got, with a bit of time for maybe some questions. You'll notice that I prioritize attitudes over structure. So I'm copying from the Agile manifesto. It says individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So I kind of copied that, prioritize attitudes over structures. You will need some structural changes, but most of it's attitude. The problem is you can't buy attitude. You can't go out to McKinsey and say, give me $10 million worth of improved attitude, right? But you can say, give me $10 million worth of new processes and role descriptions. And so executives can buy structures, but you can't just buy attitude. Attitude's a daily work. And in most big companies, the execs haven't got time for that, right? They've got a bonus that they have to get new customers or something. They can't be doing all this attitude stuff like that. So prioritize over structure. And then this is like a nice little summary slide about Heart of Agile. Start small, keep it simple. The one sentence I picked for collaborate is increase the quality of listening. What we did in the Agile manifesto, we had 17 middle-aged, type A leadership white males who managed to agree on something remarkable inside of a 2-day period. And when I go back over and over and over, what was different to that meeting and every other one was the quality of the listening, the generosity in believing the other people knew something and listening hard to figure out what it was they knew that maybe they weren't expressing perfectly. The quality of listening was, in that meeting, the best I've ever seen anywhere, bar none. So increase the quality of listening. Deliver something. Deliver something small and soon. I used to say early and often, and Sola convinced me to say something small and soon, right? It's not faster, but sooner, right? Pause, breathe, check your data and emotions, and then make small changes. So, that's all of it on one slide. And I'll just leave it right there, and I believe we've got time, even for some questions.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Yeah, we have some time. I have to cover my eyes if we're not in Finland, so there could be a question. Oh, the Norwegians are worse than the Finns these days? Finns talk these days. Norwegians don't.
Well, I have one. So I was wondering, you call yourself, I think, an anarchist, and you have, I can sense that you have a lot of ideas and stuff like that. Can you really do these small changes? I would imagine you would be the person that wants to go to 10 straight away or implement some.
That was a strange question we have to echo it. He says, I'm going to slightly misphrase you just to show you where the logical disconnect was.
Okay.
Because I'm an anarchist, I therefore want to jump straight to 10. That doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Because I'm an anarchist, I don't want anybody to tell me what to do.
Okay.
And nor do I want to tell anybody else what to do. It's got nothing to do with my ambition level. In fact, I've just learned that the micro changes work better.
Okay.
They just work better. Also, apropos feedback, I would say back around up till 2018, I go, I'm a smart guy. I like me. I like my ideas. My ideas are brilliant. And so I'm going to follow my ideas. And then when we did the new logo for the Heart of Agile, it was different colors, and all my friends told me it sucked, which it did. And so we made new colors. But how many decisions are in that logo? We'll play with this in the workshop tomorrow. How many decisions are in that logo? It turns out a lot. And so we got pretty close. But what color should the text be on the collaborate? Because the others are obvious white. Is that a 2D heart or a 3D heart? How thick are those lines? Are they shadows? Are the shadows on here? No. So there were a lot of little designs. I went out to Twitter like twice a day, and I would say, what do you guys think about this? And Heart of Agile is capital H, little o, capital A, Heart of Agile. The reason is because I said HOA, and all the Americans go, that means Homeowners Association, and we all hate it. And we also tried H, little o, little fa, like Heart of Agile, and the Germans said that means Courtyard A, Hof A. Right? So I went out to Twitter, and they broke everything, and then I used to have Collaborate on the left, because I like it there. It's like 9 o'clock, I read it that way. People said, oh, this is great. Deliver, reflect, improve, collaborate. I love it. I go, no, collaborate first. So tears in my eyes, I had to change it and put collaborate at the top. The point being, I got so much feedback from Twitter over like a 2-week period that totally broke me of any concept of being bright and brilliant. And now, if you follow me on Twitter, if any of you follow me on Twitter, every time I have an idea, boom, it's on Twitter, right? I'm writing hexagonal architecture. I go, here's my explanation of hexagonal in 2 layers. What do you think? Thank you very much. Right? So same with the micro improvements in the macro. It just, people just feel better. You get success. You get success. You get success. You get success. Right? So I'm a micro touch, consultant. Some people are like chiropractic consultants. Kent Beck, I used to make. I'm gonna maybe end with this one. Kent Beck is brilliant. I love him. And back in the 90s, we could never really consult on the same project because he's a more chiropractic guy. He would take your head and go, turn it around 180 degrees and say, isn't that nice? Look down, you can see your feet now. And I'm the micro-touch guy. What are the least changes? So I'm always a guest. I'm always a guest in every culture. I figure every culture works. There's a reason why it still exists. I can't mess with the macro structure of the culture. So I'm always like, what are the changes we can make that people don't mind making? And you can make a lot of improvements just on that. So that's the anarchist and the not to 10. I think that's probably now coffee time, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you very much.